It is good to see each of you here this morning as we continue our series of characters of Christmas, and it's good to see those of you who are watching online with us as well. If you have your Bible, we're going to be in Luke 2, verse 7, and this will be our verse for the day, starting in Luke chapter 2, verse 7. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, for there was no room for them in the inn. And with that one verse, we have created an entire character in the biblical story, the innkeeper. You might picture the innkeeper looking at like this, or you might picture the innkeeper looking like that, or maybe even, I think there's one more picture maybe like that. But I imagine that each of us has this idea and image of the innkeeper. The innkeeper makes it into our Christmas movies. The innkeeper finds its way into our Christmas pageants. The innkeeper has even made a cameo in more than one Christmas Eve sermon. And that is so ironic because the innkeeper is not in the Bible. Only the words that she gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in swaddling clothes, placed him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. But let's be honest for a moment. Joseph and Mary did not go all the way from Nazareth down to Judea and Bethlehem and see the no vacancy sign to at least not park the donkey and go up to the door and knock on it and see if there was anybody there. There had to be an innkeeper. Authors think there is an innkeeper. Don't go to Amazon right now and don't cheat at home. I can see you through the camera. Don't go to Amazon right now. But later today, if you went to Amazon, you could buy books. The Innkeeper, The Innkeeper's Bench, The Innkeeper in Bethlehem, The Innkeeper's Journal. We don't actually know who the person is, but we have the journal. And here we are today, 12 days away from Christmas, obsessed with a character that's not even in the Bible, asking ourselves the question, why did the innkeeper not have room for the Holy Family and booted them outside to the barn with the animals? And it doesn't help us with our investigative work when we know that the word room and inn, it's somewhat ambiguous in our modern day ear. What exactly is being spoken about? Or is this inn like the antiquities equivalent of a bed and breakfast? Or was the room just an extended guest room with the family? Maybe a guest room with the extended family? And was Jesus not really born in a barn, but was it more like a cave on the edge of somebody's property? These questions people have been asking for hundreds of years, but there's only one question that I have been thinking about all week long. Why did the innkeeper not have room? Why did he not make room for Joseph, Mary, and Jesus? I was thinking about this, and I thought to myself, maybe the innkeeper was busy. Yes, maybe the innkeeper was busy. I can imagine the innkeeper right here with us, looking at us, speaking to us, saying, "Oh, Southland 2020, if you want to cast stones at me, feel free, go right ahead." But you weren't there. There was a last-minute census at the last hour, and I was the innkeeper. I've never been so busy. I was up to my head in details. And to top it all off, 4 months before the census was announced, there was this group from Greece. They called me because they said that Jerusalem did not have enough rooms, and they were wondering if they would make the short walk out to Bethlehem, would I have 4 rooms for them? I had a group from Greece, and I had the census with the Roman soldiers. They were all in the establishment at the same place. I was busy. I've thought to ask myself, why in the world did I ever get into the innkeeper business? A couple of years ago, I thought I would make a profit. So I built a wing, 12 rooms, bed and breakfast type. 2 years later, I haven't even paid back the initial bank loan, much less seen a dime. There has been more than one time I've thought to myself, why did I ever want to be a small business owner? So if you're asking me about a specific night, the night where Quirinius was governor, the census night, no, I don't remember very much. I imagine if it was like all the other peak times, I probably didn't even eat dinner. And please don't ask me about any of the guests. I don't do a good job remembering names. Honestly, I don't even remember the faces of the guests unless they are those people who are griping and complaining and thinking they are the only place in the hotel. You're going to ask anyway, aren't you? They always do. You want to know about a young Jewish couple, woman very pregnant? I don't remember her. And if you think that is cold and callous, that I wouldn't remember and make room for a woman who is 9 months pregnant about to have a baby, all I can tell you is that I am sorry. You weren't there. It was crazy. Roman soldiers telling me that they didn't have enough towels for the commander in room 110, that the fireplace needed to be fixed in 111. They weren't sure that they had enough muffins for the next day's breakfast. I did not have room for another ordinary couple, pregnant or not. Maybe it was the busyness that kept the innkeeper from having any room for the family that day. We all know what it's like to be busy, to have people expect something from us, breathing down our necks with demands and complaints. I know they said that we weren't supposed to be as busy this Advent season, but I don't know about you. I write something on the calendar, I erase it. I write something else on the calendar, I erase it. Our local high school football team isn't even done with the football playoffs yet. They play Thursday night in Abilene. Will they take the band? Will they take the drill team? What about football players? And how many buses will they take? And do I need to provide snacks? Because I don't think the school's doing food like they used to. Do I need to do the laundry when they come back home? How many are we taking? What time do they need to be there? How many masks do I need to pack? I'm telling you, I thought this year would be easier, but it's not. It just keeps getting busier and busier. And if we had time for testimonies from work, I hear the same thing. A few weeks ago, somebody around here told me they were surprised their business was still open, that profits have been down 40% since April. He told me that since there wasn't that much to do at the office, everyone works twice as hard just to look busy. I don't know about you. I would love to make more room in my life for my family, for my friends, for outsiders that just might appear. But even today, I'm just so busy, I don't have time for one more thing or one more person in my life. Maybe the innkeeper didn't have any room for Jesus because he was busy. But maybe it wasn't busyness at all. Maybe the innkeeper didn't struggle with busyness. Maybe those biblical scholars that tell us that this room that they were looking for is really a guest room in the extended family. Maybe they didn't have room there because of a family squabble. Now, I can imagine this. Stay with me here, but can't you see Joseph leaving Nazareth, meeting with his uncle, and his uncle telling, hey, I know it's going to be crazy with the census. When you get to Bethlehem, knock on Cousin Dan's door. You haven't seen Cousin Dan since you're 2 years old, but just tell him whose family you are, and they'll let you in because family always makes room for family. Joseph, are you sure you want to take Mary with you in her condition? Joseph gave Uncle one more look. He didn't ask about that anymore. He just said, make sure you knock on Cousin Dan's door when you get to Bethlehem. But could it be that when Joseph and Mary got to Bethlehem, they knocked on Cousin Dan's door? Could it be that they were not welcomed with warm wishes and Andy mints on the pillows? Could it just happen to be that maybe the news of Mary's premarital pregnancy got down through the grapevine to Cousin Dan, and he had 2 teenage daughters at the house, and he didn't want to appear like he was supporting immoral behavior? Or maybe it had nothing to do with the baby on the way. Maybe, just maybe, there was a family feud from generations back. Joseph didn't know about it, but the minute that Cousin Dan had Joseph introduced who he was, he thought to himself, there is no way I am helping a family member of you-know-who. It wouldn't be the first time that I've seen a family feud and a family squabble stay dormant and then rise to the surface years later. This occurred to me about 4 years ago when I was visiting my 96-year-old great aunt on her birthday and her daughter, my cousin, who was around age 70. Now, before I had this conversation with my great aunt on her birthday, I always had this picture of my grandfather being the patriarch of the family, well-loved, hard worker. Everybody wanted to model their life after my grandfather. Now, I do want to tell you that my mother was one of 3 children, and she was the favorite child of my grandfather, no doubt about it. And this is how I got my picture of my grandfather until that conversation. And in that conversation, my great aunt told me, now, Chris, I don't want to upset you about your grandfather, but he was not a good man. He pried his way into your grandmother's life, hoping that there was family money. And when they got married, he made poor choices, he swindled the resources, and he drove your grandmother to a life of loneliness. After that 30-minute sermon, all I can tell you was I was so grateful that I had my own place to stay that night, and I didn't need a room. Could it be that there was no room for Jesus because of a family squabble? She gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and placed him in the manger because there was no room for them in the inn. There is so much mystery around this innkeeper that the possibilities of what actually took place, they just seem to be limitless. Maybe it wasn't busyness. Maybe it wasn't a family squabble. Maybe the reason that the innkeeper didn't have any room for Jesus, he was just flat out tired and exhausted. Maybe the busyness and the family squabbles, they had something to do with it. But maybe there was no room for the family because he was tired. Now, I don't think it takes very much to come up with this scenario. Can't you see that innkeeper waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning knowing what's on the books for the day? There he is in the lobby making sure that there's enough eggs on the buffet table, telling everyone thank you for staying and making sure that they put their little survey card in the box. And like every other night, there's that one family who thinks that the checkout time does not apply to them. So by the time the Ackerman family leaves at 2 o'clock in the afternoon from the Bethlehem Inn, the people who are on the books for the night of the census, they are already appearing. And at 3 o'clock, 2 of the housekeepers call in sick. He gets a text saying that there's something wrong with the kitchen, and he's not sure if there's enough firewood to make it through the night. Between 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock, the innkeeper had never seen so much hustle and bustle taking place in Bethlehem before. And by the time the Cohen family pulls in at 10:45 p.m., all 6 of them, and they get their key and he gets them down to the room, he's exhausted. He walks back from the wing that he built on. He gets down to his own room. He takes off his owner tag, and he drops down into bed with all of his clothes on, hoping to find some sleep. 5 minutes as he's laying there, he hears someone knock at the front door of the inn, and he looks over to his sweet, dear Sarah and says, Sarah, can you go down and check and see what they want and just tell them we don't have any more room? But if you would have known his Sarah, once Sarah sees that there's a lady who's already in labor, there's no way she's going to let him sleep until he does something. So he says, Sarah, tell them we don't have any room, but if they go out on the back of the property, there's the barn. It's not much, but they can protect themselves from the elements. There'll be a little shelter, and tell them it's on the house. Sarah says, well, aren't you going to wake up and help them out there yourself? He goes, no, it's been a day. I just gave them free lodging. Tell them good luck. Next thing you know, the innkeeper wakes up by the rooster crow at 5-something in the morning. Sarah looks at him and says, do you want to know what happened last night? No, not really. She said it was a boy. It was a boy. And the strangest things happened. There were some strangers that walked onto our property. And as she begins to tell the story, he says, I just don't have any time for this. I got to get all these people out of this place, make sure they have enough. The Gellers are already complaining about the coffee in the foyer. Last thing the innkeeper hears is his wife saying to him as he walks out the door, I still just don't understand. How did those shepherds know that there was a baby born on our property last night? And she gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and placed him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. There are several reasons why the innkeeper maybe did not have any room for the family that night. Busyness, a family squabble, maybe just tired and complete exhaustion. But what if the most logical truth is the most obvious one? The reason there is no mention of the innkeeper in the Bible is because the innkeeper was not there. The innkeeper decided to disengage, take a break, get out of town. This was the first census in decades, but he wasn't a young innkeeper. He had been there for a while, and he thought to himself, I remember the one from 24 years ago. That town was crazy, and our town has increased by 15%. I'm not staying in town for this. Honey, remember that 4-day weekend vacation I told you that we've been talking about for months? We're going on the census weekend. 3 steps off the porch, he looks back, he says, turn that sign to no vacancy. We are getting out of Dodge. And in that sense, I wonder how many of us are innkeepers this morning. We fail to have room for Jesus in our life because we have made a conscious or an unconscious decision to unplug, take a break. The world has been so chaotic this year that if I can just bunker down and not engage with anyone, I'll be okay. The drama of life can be suffocating. Everything pressing in on each side of what we have going on, that some figuratively or literally have said, I'm headed to the mountains, or in my case, the beach. The news about the sickness is only getting worse and worse each day. COVID, cancer, the common cold. Any news from our government does not bring happy thoughts to our soul. After we've had to experience 2 quarantines ourselves, losing a grandparent, and not knowing what shoe will drop next, there have been more than one of us who might have said, I'm ready to take a break, have a sabbatical, get out of town for a while, unplug and not engage with anything, and not have room for one more person in my life. And as we approach Christmas, could it be that Jesus wants to appear in our midst, and we have decided to check out? Could it be that Christ's Spirit wants to manifest itself and bring salvation to our crisis in 2020, to bring salvation to our personal predicament, and we've already decided we have no more room. I assume that the church will wonder who the innkeeper was until the end of time. We just don't know. All we know is that he or she did not have any room for Jesus that night. We know the innkeeper missed an opportunity to have the Savior of the world be born. He missed the chance to hold the baby in his arms, to tell his grandchildren about the time where God chose to come in flesh, and the first night he spent was in his establishment. All we know is that the innkeeper missed the greatest opportunity he ever could have had because he didn't have any more room. The innkeeper was not Herod. He did not go killing any babies and murdering anybody. The innkeeper was not a tax collector who skimmed off the top and betrayed his own people. The innkeeper was a hard-working, good citizen, probably well-respected in the community. It makes me think that of all the characters in the Christmas story, you and I might have the most in common with the innkeeper. Maybe the church should be kinder to the innkeeper, let him off the hook. But we just can't, can we? He missed an opportunity of a lifetime. But maybe if the church could let the innkeeper off the hook, give him a pass, then maybe you and I could get a pass too when we don't make room for Jesus. But I just can't do that this morning. I can't give you a pass. I can't give me a pass either. Christmas is coming in 12 days, and Jesus will be appearing. Christmas is coming, and maybe not in 12 days, but maybe 3 o'clock this afternoon when that knock comes at your door to people you do not know. That phone call appears from the acquaintance friend that you haven't talked to in years. When your child pulls you aside and says, "Mom, Dad, I need your attention for a little bit." It comes in the form of a ministry opportunity. It comes in a form of a chance encounter that is not on your calendar. But Jesus is coming in some form or some fashion to our lives, and it might happen today, and the only question that's left for us to ask is this one. Will you make room for Jesus in your life? For she gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and placed him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn.